Bad News Bears crashed into theaters in 1976 and completely flipped the sports movie formula on its head. Released by Paramount Pictures and directed by Michael Ritchie with a script from Bill Lancaster, this wasn't your typical feel-good underdog story. Right in the middle of it all was Walter Matthau as Coach Morris Buttermaker, sitting in a blazing California dugout with a cooler full of beer, a terrible record, and zero interest in giving anyone a motivational speech. Next to him stood Tatum O'Neal's Amanda Wurlitzer, a 12-year-old pitching machine with a serious fastball, and a look that made it clear she wasn't impressed by adults at all. Then there was Jackie Earle Haley's Kelly Leak, the rebellious outsider who rolled into practice like it was optional, showing up only when he felt like it and daring anyone to challenge him. What started as a rough, unconventional film exploded into a full-blown legacy, spawning sequels, a TV series, and even a 2005 remake that copied the original's gritty style almost frame for frame. But behind the mismatched uniforms, edgy humor, and chaotic energy was something much deeper. There were shocking casting decisions, a writer pulling from real childhood pain, a hidden pay gap nobody talked about, and even a lost alternate ending that still lingers in the footage like a ghost. Here are 10 surprising facts about the Bad News Bears. And trust this, fact number 10 will change how you see the entire movie. Right in the background of one scene is a detail that secretly reveals a championship ending the filmmakers tried to bury. Number 1, the A-list stars who almost took over the dugout before Walter Matthau ever threw on that Chico's bail bonds jersey or popped open his first on-screen beer. The Bad News Bears nearly looked completely different because two of the biggest names in 1970s, Hollywood passed on the role of Coach Morris Buttermaker. First up was Steve McQueen. Yeah, that's Steve McQueen, the king of cool, the guy who could say everything without saying a word. But he passed due to scheduling conflicts, and honestly, it's hard to imagine him in this role. McQueen's whole vibe was sharp, controlled, and intense, while Buttermaker needed to feel worn down, messy, and like he gave up caring a long time ago. Then came Warren Beatty, another massive name, and again, same outcome. He turned it down too, but just picture it for a second, it doesn't quite land. Beatty had that polished, charming presence, the kind that pulls people in. But this role needed someone rough around the edges, someone who could deliver lines with a tired, no-nonsense honesty instead of smooth charisma. What the film really needed was Walter Matthau, an actor who looked like he'd already had a bad start to his day and wasn't trying to hide it from anyone. He brought that perfect mix of frustration, humor, and zero desire to impress, and it changed everything. The studio didn't get there right away, but when they did, they landed on the one choice that actually made this movie work. Number 2. The Hollywood father who secretly inspired the coach. Bill Lancaster didn't just come up with Morris Buttermaker out of nowhere. This character hit a lot closer to home than most people realize. Bill Lancaster was the son of Hollywood legend Burt Lancaster, a guy known for being intense, athletic, and completely in control on screen. He had that commanding presence that could take over any scene. But off-screen, those same traits didn't just disappear. The stories paint a picture of someone with high expectations, serious competitiveness, and a personality that didn't exactly relax when the camera stopped rolling. So when Bill sat down to write a youth baseball coach who pushes too hard, drinks too much, and treats a kids' league like it's personal business, he wasn't guessing. He was pulling from real life. This wasn't some random character build. This was memory, experience, and emotion all wrapped into one. That's why Buttermaker feels so real. He's not a villain, and he's not some perfect mentor either. He's messy, sarcastic, and clearly hiding the fact that he actually cares way more than he lets on. Every joke, every frustrated moment, it all feels lived in because it is. And when you look at it closely, it's hard to miss. This is the portrait of a complicated father figure, drawn by someone who understood that dynamic firsthand. Bill Lancaster. Never spelled it out, but he didn't have to. It's all right there on screen, and it's a big reason why this character still sticks with people. Number 3, the screenwriter's personal wound that shaped the entire story. If Coach Buttermaker carries shades of Burt Lancaster, then Amanda Wurlitzer carries something just as real, Bill Lancaster's own childhood experience. Growing up, Bill Lancaster dealt with a physical limitation that made him feel out of place on the baseball field. He played first base, showed up, competed, and did everything he could, but he knew what it felt like to not fully fit in, to stand there in the same uniform as everyone else, yet feel completely different inside. That kind of quiet isolation doesn't just disappear, and he carried it straight into the script. Amanda Wurlitzer, the standout pitcher, the outsider, the one who doesn't quite blend in with the rest of the team, was built from that emotional truth. Not in a literal way, her strength is her talent, but underneath it all, she reflects that same feeling of being the misfit who refuses to back down. She's confident, sharp, and always a step removed from the crowd, and that tension makes her feel real. And it didn't stop with her. The entire film pulls from that same raw place. Parents yelling like it's the World Series, coaches acting like kids are fighting for a pro contract, and adults turning a simple game into something way too serious. None of that was exaggerated for laughs. It came from memory. That's what makes the Bad News Bears hit different. This wasn't just satire or some over-the-top sports story. Bill Lancaster was putting real moments, real emotions, and real frustration onto the screen, and you can feel it in every single scene whether you realize it or not. Number 4, the audition that literally rolled in on 2 wheels. Most casting stories from the 1970s are pretty standard. Headshots, callbacks, agents making calls behind the scenes. But Jackie Earle Haley, he did things his own way, and it was wild. At just 14 years old, Haley showed up to audition for Kelly Lee by riding a motorcycle. Alone. Without a license. Yeah, seriously. He pulled into the studio lot like it was no big deal. Parked and walked inside like this was just another normal day, and right there before he even read a single line, the casting team already saw it. They weren't looking at a kid making a reckless choice, they were looking at Kelly Leak in real life, because that's exactly who Kelly Leak is supposed to be, the rebellious, rule-breaking, doesn't care what you think type who shows up whenever he feels like it and dares anyone to say something. That entrance basically sealed the deal. No acting required in that moment. It was pure attitude, and it matched the character perfectly. In the film, Leak rides a compact Harley-Davidson model, rough sounding and tough looking, exactly what you'd expect for a kid with a reputation for trouble. But when it came to the more dangerous stunts, tight turns, longer rides, anything risky, the production switched things up and used a Honda XR75 to stay on the safe side and keep everything under control. Still, the image that stuck with audiences wasn't the stunt double or the safer bike. It was that first impression, a teenage outlaw pulling up to a baseball field like he already owned the place, like the rules didn't apply to him at all. And honestly, that energy never left his character for a second. Number 5, the pay gap hiding behind the film's success. The Bad News Bears pulled in over $32 million at the box office, making it one of the biggest hits of 1976. But once you look past the numbers on the surface, the money story behind the scenes tells a very different story. Walter Matthau came into the film with a massive deal, $750,000 up front and 10% of the film's theatrical earnings. By the time everything was counted, he walked away with over $2 million. That's a huge payday, no question. Now here's where things get uncomfortable. Tatum O'Neal, who played Amanda Wurlitzer, earned $350,000, less than half of Matthau's base salary. She also had a share of the profits, somewhere between 8% and 9%, which helped close the gap later. But that starting number says a lot, because this wasn't some unknown young actor. O'Neal had already won an Academy Award for Paper Moon in 1973 at just 10 years old, making history as the youngest Oscar winner ever. She had already proven she could carry a film, and in the Bad News Bears, she did exactly that. It gets even more surprising. In 1976, O'Neal ranked 8th on the industry's top money-making stars list. By the industry's own standards, she was one of the biggest draws at the time, even ranking higher than Matthau that year. So while the back-end deal helped balance things out as the film made money, the original pay split tells the real story. The actor carrying the emotional core of the film walked into negotiations already earning significantly less, and that gap was there from the very beginning. Number 6, the PG rating that completely shocked audiences. The Bad News Bears was officially labeled PG, meaning family-friendly, general audiences, just a little parental guidance suggested. But once people actually sat down and watched it, that label started raising a lot of eyebrows fast because this film didn't hold back at all. It included heavy language, offensive remarks, kids smoking on screen, gambling, and even a coach drinking while driving. And then came the moment that really stunned people. A scene where the coach hands out beers to a team of 11-year-olds like, it's no big deal. Here's the key detail that explains how this even happened. PG-13 didn't exist yet. That rating wouldn't show up until 1984, so back in 1976, there was nothing between PG and R. That meant the Bad News Bears landed on the family side by default, even though the content clearly pushed way past what most people expected from that label. And the language, it wasn't just background noise or a one-off joke. There's a moment where one of the kids says a line packed with multiple offensive slurs in a single breath, and the film doesn't stop to explain or correct it. It just moves forward. That choice was intentional. Bill Lancaster wasn't trying to clean things up or turn it into a lesson. He was showing how kids actually talked in those environments, especially when adults weren't stepping in. It was raw, uncomfortable, and way too real for some viewers. Parents who walked in expecting a light sports movie were caught completely off guard. A lot of them were upset, and the backlash hit hard throughout 1976, with critics calling out the rating as completely misleading. But here's the twist: Paramount didn't change anything. The rating stayed, the film kept playing, and despite all the complaints, people kept buying tickets. And just like that, a bigger conversation started about what was really being shown on screen versus what audiences thought they were getting. Number 7, 3 months on the mound that changed everything. When Tatum O'Neal was cast as Amanda Wurlitzer, director Michael Ritchie had a simple, practical thought. If the baseball scenes got too difficult, they could always fake it. Careful camera angles, quick edits, maybe even a double stepping in from a distance. Hollywood had been pulling off those tricks for years, but O'Neal wasn't interested in faking anything. She shut that idea down completely and went all in. For 3 straight months before filming even started, she trained with a professional pitching coach, not just to look convincing, but to actually throw a real fastball. We're talking full mechanics here. The stance, the stride, the arm extension, the rotation, and that sharp wrist snap that gives the pitch real speed. By the time the camera started rolling, what you see on screen isn't acting, it's real athletic skill. Every windup feels natural, every pitch has power. And that release, it wasn't movie magic. It was earned through hours and hours of practice. And that detail matters more than people realize. The Bad News Bears works because it feels real across the board. Real kids, real struggles, real emotions. So when Amanda steps onto the mound as the best player out there, you believe it instantly. That authenticity hits hard, and it gives the film an edge that most sports movies just don't have. Now, to be fair, the production did use a double for a few specific moments. Some of the more technical shots, high-speed pitches, or tricky camera setups where precision mattered. But those were just small pieces. The majority of what you see, that's Tatum O'Neal putting in real work and delivering for real. And back in 1976, seeing a 12-year-old girl throwing that kind of heat on screen wasn't something audiences expected. It stood out, it made an impact, and it added another layer to a film that was already breaking all the rules. Number 8, the uniforms that were designed to look completely wrong. The Bad News Bears didn't just happen to look messy. Every detail was planned that way on purpose. The costume designers treated the uniforms like part of the story, not just something the kids wore in the background. The goal was simple. Before the team even said a word, you should already know exactly who they are just by looking at them. So when the Bears step onto the field next to clean, well-funded teams like the Yankees, the difference hits instantly. No explanation needed. The other teams look sharp, organized, and professional. And then here come the Bears looking like they barely got dressed in time. Their uniforms are cheap on purpose. They don't fit right, they're slightly wrinkled, and even the logo looks off, like it was slapped on quickly without much care. It gives off that rushed, uneven energy that makes the whole team feel out of place right away. But here's where it gets interesting. As the Bears start winning games, nothing about their look changes. The uniforms stay bad, the fit stays awkward, and the logo still looks off. And somehow, that starts to work in their favor. What once looked embarrassing starts to feel like a statement. The gap between how they look and how they play begins to close, and suddenly, those same uniforms don't feel like a weakness anymore. They feel like proof that they don't need to look perfect to compete. That visual contrast becomes one of the film's smartest moves. They were built to look like they didn't belong, so every small win hits harder. Quick pause, if you're enjoying this breakdown, hit like and subscribe so you don't miss more deep dives like this. And drop a comment, what's your memory of the Bad News Bears? Did you grow up watching it or discover it later? Now back to it, because there's still more behind this story that most people never notice. Number 9, the beer scene that shocked an entire generation. The ending of the Bad News Bears became one of the most talked about moments of the 1970s, not because the team wins, but because they don't. and still celebrate like they just took the championship anyway. Instead of the usual sad, emotional wrap-up, the Bears go the opposite direction. They're spraying drinks, chugging, yelling, and laughing like they just pulled off the biggest victory of their lives. It's loud, messy, and completely defiant. But here's the part that surprised a lot of people. The kids weren't actually drinking alcohol. What you're seeing on screen is ginger ale. Fizzy, harmless, and probably still felt like a big deal for a group of kids in that moment. On camera, though, it looks real enough to make audiences do a double take. Now, Coach Buttermaker, that's a different story. His character leans fully into the role, and the film doesn't shy away from it. Throughout the movie, he's seen with a wide mix of beer brands: Budweiser, Miller High Life, Pabst Blue Ribbon, and more. It's not random either. It tells you exactly who he is. This is a guy who isn't chasing image or status. He grabs whatever's there, whatever's cheap, whatever works. That detail adds another layer to his character, a former ball player who's long past caring about appearances, but that final scene is what really stuck with people. A losing team celebrating like winners, that wasn't normal for sports movies back then, and that's exactly why it worked. The film makes it clear. They didn't need a trophy to prove anything. That wild, chaotic celebration wasn't about the scoreboard. It was about refusing to let a loss define them. Number 10, why Little League officially wanted no part of this movie. The Bad News Bears is set in a youth baseball league, but it's never directly called Little League on purpose, and that wasn't a creative accident. That distinction wasn't storytelling style, it was legal pressure. Little League International saw what the film was shaping up to be and didn't want their name attached to it at all. They reviewed the content: an adult coach drinking throughout practices and games, kids picking up on bad behavior, and a dugout where discipline barely exists. Add in the profanity, the chaos, and the overall messy energy around youth sports, and the organization made its call fast. No logo usage, no official branding, and no direct reference to Little League Baseball in the dialogue. The film could show youth baseball in general, but it could not officially represent the Little League name. The concern was simple from their side. They didn't want audiences connecting that behavior to their organization, especially in a story where coaches bend rules, parents treat games like high-stakes tournaments, and the whole system feels out of control. Letters and complaints followed, with real-world coaches and community members adding to the pressure. The worry was that kids watching the film might think that kind of behavior was normal in organized youth leagues. But what critics didn't fully separate was the film's intent. Bill Lancaster wasn't inventing chaos just for shock value. He was pulling from real experiences, real sidelines, and real adult behavior he had seen growing up. That's why it lands so sharply. The adults feel familiar because they're based on reality, not exaggeration. And that's exactly what made the film uncomfortable for some, and unforgettable for everyone else who kept watching it anyway. And there you have it. 10 surprising facts about the Bad News Bears. Which one hit you the hardest? Drop it in the comments and let it be known. And if this brought back memories of a team you played on that had no business sharing the same field as anyone else, send this to someone who was right there with you. Smash like, subscribe, and share the video so more people can catch these stories. This is $21, and we don't just watch movies, we break them down piece by piece. Until next time, keep watching what came before.